So you were saying regarding the new statue that's up there that you felt like John Keel really has an attachment to that statue, and that you feel that that's the beginning of a healing process for Point Pleasant?
I do. When they unveiled it, that was my first thought, because frankly, I was laughing at the unveiling, because typically with an unveiling, it's all done at once, and this was like more of a striptease, so I was getting amused at the Mothman as it was being unveiled. But the moment it was unveiled, I just got this sense of lightning that this was the beginning of a new era for this whole area, that it was a healing and a rebirth of sorts, because I made the comment to John Keel that it seemed like the entire infrastructure of the area, not just economically, but emotionally, physically, and especially spiritually, collapsed with that bridge in 1967, has never recovered. And perhaps that this was a new beginning for them, a rebuilding process, a healing process. And he absolutely agreed with me. And I'm kind of struck, because he's a man of very few words, I'm kind of struck at how attached he is to this statue and what it means to these people.
When we were eating at the Ponderosa Steakhouse just now, amazingly, we meet this woman named Kathy Bowden from Crown Point, Ohio. Crown City. She grew up in Huntington, West Virginia, and she's about my age, and at about the same time, she saw Mothman, one of the best sightings I have ever heard of. It was in a tree. It squawked at her, it screamed at her, she turned, she looked, it screamed at her, she saw it fully, and it was daylight. She saw its feet, which very rarely anyone ever remembers that. She's got a complete and good look at it, the whole thing. She says that she saw the statue and it doesn't look like what she saw. So, and it flew away, and she actually saw it flap its wings, which rarely do people see, and then flapped its wings 2 or 3 times and then soared away at a really high rate of speed.
You know, Andy, I was particularly struck with Kathy as well, because I think she may have been a little older than us. She looked very hardened, but then again, she may have been our age. She was extremely articulate, obviously well-read, and perhaps, even though she said she didn't feel it had changed her, perhaps she had a consciousness expansion early on, because most people in this area, you start mentioning current events or anything other than their normal daily routine, they don't understand anything. And this woman just was so articulate for someone that was from this area, never been outside this area. Perhaps her expansion came early on, and that we're seeing the result of it today.
John Keel made a joke after once the employees there at the Ponderosa discovered who we were, that suddenly we had a Mothman witness talking to us, and he made the joke that that's why he doesn't mention it anymore, because he gets so many people coming up and telling their stories, and I guess he has hundreds and perhaps thousands of letters from people, saying that they've seen part of this phenomenon, and a lot of them want answers. There aren't any answers ultimately.
It keeps crossing my mind that when Keel was a young reporter, he's like most young reporters and writers. When you're trained to be objective, he was out there searching for the answer, just like everyone else. And I think in the latter years, he's just eased off. And although I'm just going to hammer this home again, he professes to no spiritual practice to speak of, just perhaps being aware enough to make the statement that I have no answers is what he's learned. That the journey's far more important than the end of it, where it takes you. And he's, in my opinion, very much still on that journey. He's old enough and wise enough now to know that he shouldn't be searching for an answer at all.
Well, I think clearly, yeah, you can see that in his behavior with people. He's very people, he doesn't want anything out of people. He doesn't have an end, he's not trying to get something out of anyone. He's just there for you. He's there to be there, be in the moment, and And that
very
means
much
that's
so.
a person who understands that the process is the most important thing.
Definitely, I'd have to agree with that.
There are other festivals other than the Mothman Festival here in West Virginia. This is the fire sower, similar to the Thunderbird lightning. Balls of light seen over Basel in 1566.
I need to do more research on it, but okay,
what-
that's it. I'm
what-
done.
No, tell us
He's gonna make me nervous.
Tell us what happened here on the palm reading.
Well, let's see. What was the main things? And I said,
What are you looking for?
well, also the straightness of your heart line is supposed to mean that you're not overly touchy-feely. Yeah. But she does have she has the connection between the heart and the head, which sometimes signifies that people with that have a hard time separating their heart and their head, and sometimes will be in a wrong position because they might think it's love, or they can't separate their heart from their head. It's kind of all wrapped up together.
And I think I'm more head on that end because I try to be too analytical about it rather than being too hard.
But yeah, I can see that too, because that's typical
Yeah.
of the straight heart line.
Yeah.
She has a long headline too, which means she's intelligent. And
knew
one thing I
that.
said too was she had a lot of branches off, which can mean a lot of different things. But one thing I would think it would mean was that she had a lot of different ways that she could have gone career-wise or wanted to do, and it was very hard for her. Her hand doesn't have like anything real super deep. It's kind of been where she would go wherever she wanted to go at the moment, and she really didn't have one way she knew she was going to go. Now, I told her she had a triangle on her heart line, an island, which sometimes can signify divorce or a really hard period in your relationship. But who doesn't have one, probably, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
But sometimes, I mean, somebody will have, say, two really pronounced ones, and they've had two divorces, or it does mean more than just hard relationships. But she's got a long lifeline, and that's about all I was going to say about it. But when she laid her hands down, I asked her to lay her hands down flat, however she wanted, and she laid them down perfectly beside each other, which I told her that she was very organized. She wanted things organized, and just so she wants it, she likes
ring
things
true.
I can
really.
qualify that everything you said is right on target.
But she's got the hard-working, practical hand too. She's got the square, where like my hands are really long and skinny, which means I'm disorganized and I'm more artistic, artsy type. I don't really care. I put my hands down however they feel, Where she's not. She's wants it the way she wants. But she did have her fingers open, which means that she is open. She's able. You can get close to her. She's not closed off. She's not hard where she won't let you in. She will let you in. But she probably wants it on her own terms, and it has to be organized, and it has to be her timetable.
Yeah, I'm the most organized person on the planet. I have everything in its place and a place for everything. You should see my office. It's so highly organized that no matter what my client comes in for, I can just lay my hands on it immediately. And I just learned that over a few months' time, what I needed to do. And you're talking about the openness. Yes, I'm very open. And the fingers spread like that, yeah, I can believe that in a hurry.
A lot of palm reading is just being receptive and watching and picking up on.
You're right, I'm extremely practical. Extremely practical.
The way somebody sits, or the way somebody holds their head, or turns, or gestures that people make can be really revealing about somebody's personality.
Oh, yeah.
If you just know little things to look for, you can tell a lot about somebody's personality.
Yeah, that's NLP. Yeah, definitely.
That really stuck with me when you said it, because I'd never had anybody say that to me before. You said I laugh to cover up seriousness of matters, so I don't have to deal with the seriousness of something. And that's
No,
true.
I don't think it was not to deal with it.
Well, you know,
I just think it's a natural. That's a natural reaction.
Yeah, but I do it. I do it.
But in
And
that is
since
your
you've
greatest
said
strength.
it,
In
I've
that
thought
is your
about it.
in that is your greatest strength, though. You're able to take an objective point of view immediately, and that's where your laughter goes. I mean, that's what your laughter signifies.
Yeah, but I'm probably also trying to.
So you could
cover
do the
up-
same objectivity without the laughing, though, if you wanted. You could just say, you could just stop and say, I'm going to be objective, and I'm not going to laugh or cry. Just continue whatever I was just doing, sort of thing.
But I think
if
a
you
lot of
want
people don't take me seriously because I do laugh. I think I'm just some silly bitch that doesn't, you know. So I
feel
think
that
about
way-
it since you said it. I think about when I laugh.
So now-
I think, now am I laughing because why am I laughing?
Yeah, and there's so many other things we can do with ourselves, to do that with. I mean, this goes on and on and on. We all have them. We all have
I
them.
think when I was a kid, I tried really hard to make Mom laugh because if I did, it was positive attention, and it made me feel special because she was laughing at me. And
Yeah.
so I kind of became a clown in a way.
Right.
You
Well,
know what I mean?
it's funny you brought that up. That's what I've been saying so much about the Native Americans is that they feel like when you've gotten into the world of the Thunderbird that you become a sacred clown. That's their description for it. But what it is that you've been given a little extra objectivity because you've seen something that doesn't fit the pattern. You've seen the glitch in the program, the Mothman or the strange animal. So you automatically have more objectivity, which is the role of the sacred clown, is to come into any activity, no matter how sacred, and represent objectivity. And usually humor is the way they do it.
I mean, I have people all the time, friends, coworkers, that come to me with their problems, and I could laugh at them and say, "You're being stupid." They listen to me. They don't get offended because of the way I say it.
Same here.
But I find myself giving advice all the time,
It's a sign of a natural feeling.
and they ask me for it. They don't just, I don't just go over and say, "Hey, let me tell you what you're doing wrong." You know.
Well, the laughter, I think, is good for them. I think your laughter is a healing laugh. I really do. It has a beautiful sound to it.
Except Andy, my boss Andy, will come around. "Okay, Moore, quit laughing and start working."
Your first book could be Laughter, Healing Through Laughter. Dick Cheney is in Charleston, West Virginia to speak to a secretive group of businessmen, and the news doesn't even tell us what it's about. They barely mentioned him right at the 8 o'clock news this morning. The interstate is blocked. Harriet tells me that Reiki masters across the country believe that he's evil and that they are sending him energy to try to sending energy his way to block his evil energy, he and Rumsfeld. Would you like to comment?
Oh yeah, we've been asked as a group by our individual masters and collective masters to send Reiki for a whole group of people that are running our country, just because we believe that they're destroying our own planet, and this is something that we're asked to do on a daily basis, if not at least a weekly basis.
Can you explain Reiki to those that would not know about it?
Reiki means universal life force energy, and Reiki is used a lot in healing. It can heal physical ailments, emotional traumas. It's a sort of a hands-on type of healing. There are different hand positions that are used, and sometimes some practitioners just use intuitive means, and that's the way I practice, is by intuitive means. But the energy, the universal life energy, can also be sent to situations. And that's what we're doing here, is we're sending the energy to help ease the situation because we really fear for our planet. And she's speaking to.
Fish tells us that someone challenged Dick Cheney in the paper to come out and tell the truth at this meeting. Fish, we're speculating that Cheney's here to plan the next terrorist strike of Al Qaeda.
And so he thought he'd consult West Virginians.
There are protesters protesting Cheney, and there are a contingent of Nazi skinhead police officers with their heads shaved, looking like stormtroopers from the 30s.
There we go. Here's the second place that it's
Fuck Cheney! Doesn't it make you feel good?
Oh, yeah.
Harriet, that'll make you feel good. Sorry, I used the F word there. It's that little bit of WTO. I was at WTO, and sometimes I get a flashback, and I just get all
Kitty.
I start cursing.
Stuff like that. I was wondering what if he weren't a Reiki practitioner or master himself, because
You mean John Keel?
Yes, because those are the principles that you're bound to when you practice Reiki. Is that you're bound to peace and you're bound to a love for Mother Earth. And he sounded so much like a Reiki master to me.
Well, don't you think Bush and Cheney are bound to the earth with their forest plan to go in and cut down trees that are there? You don't think that's... And their plan to save salmon? They came to Seattle and they said they had a big plan for the salmon, but there was no
dinner.
There was no plan other than to have a big salmon dinner. Do we want the salmon to go by the dam through this little waterway to say no? We want them blackened. Here we are on West Washington Street, one block to the north here is where a man who wrote into the Mothman Lives website discussion list says that he was standing and looked over this way, over the valley, and saw a parade of UFO craft flying down the Canal Valley. Woodward Drive. We're driving by the church. We did an interview with a lady at the festival who lived right up over this hill. And we'll show you, if you drive up here about a block, there's a turnoff from the church, and here it is. This road hooks you up with cross lanes, where there was a sighting in 1967.
Wasn't that the one out on Interstate 64? Between where a spaceship actually landed out on Interstate 64, and a Dunbar businessman actually stopped his car, got out, and looked at the spaceship and landed right in front of him on I-64.
Now, one of the parts of this Woodward Drive world that we haven't talked about is up here at the top of this hill. Before you drop over into the next drainage valley, there was an old man that lived here named Mr. Jones, and the hunters had a cabin, had a trailer that they'd somehow drug up to the top of the hill behind his house, and this is where a lot of nighttime meetings would take place, hunting, lodge kind of activity. But it got a little stranger, but I'll talk about that later. But if you stop right here, I can show people where this is. It's basically right up there behind Harriet. Actually, it looks like the house is no longer standing. If you see here, here's the foundation. Nothing left in Mr. Jones's place. If you follow this road up the hill, this is where it leads to where the old trailer was. Okay, my Aunt Eva will now tell a story about... I'm sorry. It's a story about Aunt Eva, I believe. Aunt Gennie is going to tell it.
Michelle, who's a nurse at the nursing home where Aunt Eva was, called me at 12:30, and she said, "Grandma, Aunt Eva passed away." So I walked through this house crying because I hated to let her go because that was the last one of my relatives. And then I wondered if Aunt Eva got to go to heaven. So I come into my living room and looked out the window, and the sky was just as dark as it could be. And I said, Lord, please let me know if my Aunt Eva went to heaven. And all of a sudden, there was a star appeared, and that was my sign. Aunt Eva went to heaven. It was one big star in the sky, and there was not another star. And it wasn't no airplane because it didn't move. It stayed right there.
Harriet, what do you think?
Did it stay there all night, or did it just go away?
I don't know. I just closed my draperies, and then I called Tim, and I was crying, and he said, well, Mom, I don't have no way to get there, but if you need me, I will find someone to bring me down. And I said, no, I'll settle down in a little bit. Mm-hmm. But you know, she's my last aunt, and I have no uncles left. My mom and dad's dead, my brother's dead, my sister's dead, and it was just hard on me, really.
Sure.
Because it seems like I'm all that's left out of the Withrow generation, you know? That's enough.
Well, so, but you don't remember this thing from when I think Mom said you guys were maybe 10 years old or 12 years old. I guess you're out on Haynes Branch.
Middle Fork of Pocus, where we lived, where our farm was.
Near Rippling Waters?
Yes.
Is that the Middle Fork of the Poca?
That's Middle Fork
Oh, so
of
that
Poca.
runs into the Poca.
I don't know why they call it the Middle Fork of Poca.
You know where that water goes to, where it runs into?
The Poca River.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
You don't remember that there was a light above the graveyard, or there was a church near there, and I think over above that church, she
That
said there
might
was
have
a...
been Betty saw that.
Yeah.
Because when Loretta was born, she lived in New York, and she came home and stayed with Mom and Dad for a long time while your daddy was in the Navy. So she lived at Middle Fork.
See, Aunt Jenny remembers the big white owl.
Oh boy, yeah.
So what do you remember about the big white owl?
I didn't live out there. I just remember one of you boys saw it. And you saw it 2 or 3 times.
I didn't see it.
Must have been Chipper then.
Yeah. What I remember is that I woke up to go out. I had heard the commotion or whatever about the owl, and went out, and he wasn't there. Him and Dad weren't around. Yeah, they were gone. And then I went back to bed, and the next day they said that they were out there fighting this owl or whatever, but they weren't there when I went out to check on them. So I always thought it was kind of a mystery. And since owl stories often have something to do with the paranormal, I thought that maybe they had like disappeared into another dimension for a short period of time and come back again. I don't know. That's what I always thought happened. I always thought, well, they just something weird happened, and there was a glitch in time, and they remember it as an owl, but I don't remember. Nobody saw the owl.
I think Chip did, yeah.
But Chip.
Yeah.
I think that was Chip's little brush with the paranormal.
Could have been.
And he remembers it as an owl being caught in the rose bush. Because sometimes that's what happens if somebody has missing time, or like Harriet used to walk off when she was a kid. She'd think she was gone for 10 minutes, and her mom would say, "Where have you been? It's been 4 hours." And she'd be in a place in the woods, and she'd try to go back and find it. She couldn't find it anymore.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be there.
Stuff like that happened all the time. My mom used to say, oh, you've been warned over and over not to run off. I didn't think I did. So.
Have you had anything like that, Aunt Jenny, where, I don't know, anything strange or unexplainable?
Not that I can think of, no.
Anything ghosty or anything like that?
I believe we're sometimes forewarned of things that's going to happen.
Do you have that happen?
I haven't had that happen.
Do you know someone who has, or
No.
in the family, or?
But I think that was a sure sign when I saw that star. I do. I believe that was my sign to not worry about it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that Aunt Eva was where she worked to go. You know.
So now we're talking about deceased relatives coming back. About 4 years after my dad died, I walked into the garage and I heard him clearly say, "Hello, Andy," and it just sent chills up my spine. And you know, I wasn't expecting it, so it kind of scared me. You know, startled me, and it was so long after the fact. I wasn't ready for it at all. So, but it may be. You mean something like that can happen years later, even if you're a skeptic, and I was pretty much a skeptic of that sort of thing at the time. They kind of sneak up on you.
The Bible says that when Jesus went away, he said he wouldn't leave us comfortless. So I think if I would have something that had happened that would really get me down, I think I would maybe feel Paul's presence, you know, patting me or saying it's okay, Bob, you know. Oh, they clean on each other all day. I think they're part cat. Everything, you know. If we only knew the right things to use, every seed and everything we were given.
Yeah, it's true.
You read in Genesis, it's amazing. You know what we were given and what we're supposed to eat and things like that. I went on that Atkins diet. I've been on about 2 weeks. I'm really not going whole hard, but I was really getting a belly, and I couldn't stand that. But I don't eat no bread or no potatoes. But you know I'm hungry all the time because bread and potatoes are really satisfying. You know, you sit down and eat you some mashed potatoes and gravy, you're happy.
Yeah.
And don't eat sweet stuff.
Well, you have to eat a little bit of carbohydrates, or else it affects your brain if you don't have a little bit.
I'm like, you're supposed to eat 30. So I found, I've been eating Cheerios to lower my cholesterol. Well, Cheerios is 27 carbohydrates. And then I found, you want a popsicle? I got a whole bag of popsicles. And they're only 7 carbohydrates, and they are delicious. So that's my sweet stuff, is the popsicle. Linda's on it. She's trying to lose weight before she has to face this hip surgery. She's lost 9 pounds in a month. So it's slowly losing. It's not losing real fast, you know. So if I can get this tummy off of me.
Here's my great-grandmother, Grandma Lucy. So Lucy's dad was full-blooded Indian. What tribe?
But I can't.
Is it from a tribe around here? Okay. Lucy's father was full-blooded Blackfoot Indian. Unbelievable. A new piece of information for me to follow up on. I'm going to start studying the Blackfoot tribe now.
I know she did.
And Aunt Eva's very sure that it's Blackfoot.
Yep.
Here's Aunt Eva.
It came back on. You had a boy.
Santa Claus.
Here's the Santa Claus that Aunt Eva used to have in her yard for years and years and years. And she tied him up in order to keep people from taking him?
Keep it from blowing down.
Oh.
It tells the story. They sent a photographer there to do a story about it.
Well, that thing was there forever.
Because some little child came by and he cried because that lady had Santa Claus tied up, and the lady called the Daily Mail. They came took a picture and did a write-up about it.
What's your theories about the Mothman? Do you have a theory about him?
I don't know. I read the book.
Oh, you did?
You brought me the book. I don't know what to think about. I'd like to really see him. It scared me to death, though. Now we got to cross the bridge again.
I was joking earlier when I said that since Vice President Cheney was in town, they were going to plan some terrorism. And then it turns out there was another sniper shooting here in Charleston today. Here's the article on Cheney. asking for money for Iraq. Here at the crucial moment in the family dialogue, we turn to the aspects of dream and the symbolism of fire. A life in turmoil surrounded by fire.
I gave her an interpretation of one of her dreams. Which one was it? Remember? The one with some kind of animal that keeps biting you? Or...
The cougar.
Oh, tell me about that.
I kept having these dreams where there was a cougar.
My battery's going bad. Go ahead. Sorry.
There was a cougar, and all my dreams, it would like come up to me. I'd lay down and play dead. It would like bite my neck a little and then go away.
And it repeatedly?
Yes, there's always a dream like my
That's
nightmares.
an animal guy. It's contacting
But in
me.
one dream, it was a futuristic dream. I had like a laser and stuff, and I killed it.
So in
Gotta tell you you're dreaming.
the dream you killed the panther?
The
Cougar?
Yeah.
And then what did you guys decide or talk about after that?
Well, we have two different views here. No, yours was good too, because I think the animal guide thing.
Well, and that could be exactly what the animal guide's trying to show her, is exactly what you said, because I don't know what the guide's trying to show her, but if repeatedly an animal appears in your dreams, that's definitely an animal spirit guide, and you're in a passage time, and you could absolutely be right, because this guide could be trying to show her exactly what you were talking about, and you can explain that to him.
She has a dream that she's laying and playing dead, and the cougar is nipping at her and stuff, and I think that she's too passive and she plays dead instead of facing problems or hardship, or she ignores it and just hopes it'll go away.
Is that how you
But
you
then
feel?
she has an extra dream where she in the future is older and she has a space gun type thing and she kills it. So she thinks in the future she'll be able to handle it better. And she's waiting for that.
That sounds accurate. Is that?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me, yeah, I'd agree with that, yeah.
But the animal guide could be trying to relay this message
Yeah, most definitely.
through an animal, which she feels close to.
While we were in Walmart, having had on my Mothman t-shirt, of course, we ran into a Mothman witness returning our item. Harriet, how was that? What happened there?
Well, John Keel was right. He said that anytime that you put it out there that you're involved in it, you're always going to get a story back. Somebody knows something about it. But a gal said that she was with her boyfriend and another couple people in a car after they just watched the Mothman movie at someone's home at a private party. Driving back on the back roads to wherever they live, and this huge moth-like creature hit the windshield. And she said she screamed. They all kind of freaked out, but they never got a real good look at it. So Andy's done it again. He needs to stop wearing this shirt.
She seemed pretty credible.
She did.
She was a young Asian woman, seemed very lucid.
She did. You'll get a lot of hill types around here, especially working in Walmart, but she seemed pretty normal, and she didn't offer any explanation of it, whereas one thing right away you'll notice with someone who's telling you a big story is they'll try to explain it, and she offered no explanation.
So you're saying that Keel said that for every one person there's 100?
Hundreds that don't come forward.
For every witness that comes forward, hundreds don't?
Right, and he wasn't speaking even just about the Mothman. It's all the phenomena that he's investigated throughout the years. He said that is definitely the case, and it was much worse back in the 60s at the time the Mothman was going on, because people were really afraid then of being labeled a crackpot. They are now afraid, but not as much as they were then.
Yeah, it seems like times have changed.
Yeah, people are a little more open now, but it's still one of those things they kind of have to step into. It takes a little bit of courage to step up and say, this is what I've seen.
Yeah. Why do you think it is that things have changed and and the younger people seem more open about it?
Well, I think it's a combination of two things, actually. First of all, that our society's a little more open. We're not as afraid of being labeled a loony. And second of all, this phenomenon touches everyone. Everyone has an experience like this. And when you've got this many numbers of people that step up and say, I've had an experience, it just makes the others want to step up and say the same thing. But like I said, it's just vast numbers of people will come forward now because, like I said, everyone has these experiences.
And one of the things I think I forgot to mention was yesterday as we were leaving, my niece's daughter showed me a sword that she had picked up in someone's attic. It's one of these really well-made medieval swords that I guess they use for reenactments, the Renaissance reenactment things. And she asked me to look at it because it had a face on it. It's engraved into it, and I looked at the face, and sure enough, it's the Garuda. And it even has the two snakes that are often seen. The Garuda is often, in addition to grabbing the snake off of the ground, it's sometimes shown with two serpents, grasping two, one with each claw. And this is the symbol that the medical people use now, the two snakes going up the staff, the winged staff. But yeah, she's randomly found this sword, and there it is. It's a Garuda sword. Even has little feathers etched in. So that was pretty amazing. Okay, so next we're heading to the mansion of Prescott Bush. I guess he's the grandfather of our current president.
Yes.
George W. Jr. I mean, it just goes to show that Ohio, Mothman country, is really the center of a lot of powerful interests. Can you speculate on these connections at all, Harriet?
Well, it seems to be wherever the Bushes turn up, weird things start to happen. I mean, everything from psychic to paranormal phenomena to murder and mayhem and destruction.
Do you think it's a cultural thing having to do with, I mean, let's say in this state you have a lot of Mothman sightings throughout history. Do you think that plays into the way that society here has evolved? And here we have reports of the Bushes worshiping this giant stone owl. I mean, it almost seems like that they're really in tune with the Mothman phenomenon secretly.
I think that they're definitely aware of it. I think that this kind of thing is definitely reported to the White House. It's kept very quiet. And as far as what you had said about how has this place evolved because of it, well, that's just it. I think that it has more or less gone a spiritual rebirth around here because of it. People are just much more open than they used to be because they realize that there's something higher than themselves out there, that they're a part of a larger whole, if you will.
So this is the Victoria's Secret headquarters?
Yeah, this is Victoria's Secret headquarters because Columbus is home to the Limited and Limited brands, which would be Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, Limited 2, Bath and Body Works, and you have big cornfields, and then you have the Limited.
There's just some huge corporations that have started here. Can you name some other ones?
Well, you have Battelle Industries, which is a big think tank and a pretty scary place, and has gotten into some psychic and other paranormal UFO phenomenon. If you read a lot of that type of thing, you'll see the name Battelle come up over and over and over again. Limited's about the largest. It employs about 22,000 in its various divisions. Actually, the state of Ohio State University employs about 30,000. Other industries that are here are Accuray, which nobody's really sure what the heck Accuray does. We have Chemical Abstracts. We know that they're involved in deadly weapons and that kind of thing. Trying to think of some of the other ones that would be of interest.
What's the huge military facility that does defense? Yes. What is it?
DCSC, Defense Construction Supply Center. That's where you'd find the Navy actually runs it and houses it, but it supplies all the armed forces. It's been here since I believe the early 1900s. It's near the airport. And just about everything you can think of is stored there, from ammunition to tanks to body bags, lots of body bags. In fact, when I was a loadmaster for Evergreen, they brought a bunch of body bags out to us, and we flew them over to Korea when we were having problems with North Korea. I lifted 2 million body bags on a 747.
I thought I'd talk a bit about Prescott Bush as we arrive here, get close to the mansion. I don't know that much about him. I've read a couple of articles. It sounds as if he was known as Hitler's banker. He was a banker in New York who, well, I guess he started. Did he always work out of Columbus? I don't know, but this, I guess, is their ancestral home or whatever, right?
Right. He started a company that was known as Buckeye Steel, which is on the south end of Columbus, and he also had interest in what they call Jeffrey Mining and Manufacturing. The Jeffrey family owned it, but he was like the financier. He was really the person behind it, and the Jeffrey family was kind of the front to it. And the way I've heard the story is that he more or less financed many large businesses that started in Columbus, and even perhaps started a couple of the banks, but that's never been proven one way or the other. But their major thing that they started in Columbus was Buckeye Steel, which has just been recently purchased, I believe, by a Canadian company.
In his capacity, though, as a banker, Prescott was funneling. It was the main conduit for American monies that were being given to Hitler, and I guess he was brought up on charges like 7 times. If you read some of the New York Times from that era, I think it's on the front page. Prescott Bush indicted for trading with the enemy, that kind of thing. Here we are on Man Road, Franklin County, Ohio. Secluded. Used to be pretty secluded. Still pretty far away from the city. Where we will see where the Bush family empire started. Here we are. Can't see the house. It's set back, huh?
It is, but the only time you can really see most of the house is in the wintertime.
Here's the front gate. Are you getting any psychic readings about? Did George Sr. grow up here?
No, he did not. He spent some time here, but they moved away from here not long after they built this mansion, actually, and moved to Texas. Very interesting reading, actually, what I'm getting here. I'm getting that this wasn't a happy place at all. Not a happy place at all. That this sort of white picket fence type of thing was not the case here. It was an unhappy home. And they put up airs for the rest of the world to see that they were a stable family, because they weren't. I don't know much about who Prescott Bush was married to, but I'm definitely picking up that she was unstable. Chaotic environment, very chaotic. You don't like what I'm picking up there. It's really an uneasiness. Like they were never really satisfied with the home, and they were very unhappy here. Maybe that's why they moved to Texas. I don't know. I'm sure that the rest of the world thought it was for. No way. I know those people. Or know who they are. My mom knows them really well. I wouldn't do it. No way. Because this is an area that's watched very heavily. You pull that crap, you go straight to jail.
1976.
1976.
You've told me this story a couple of times. It's you were in bed, I believe, in Texas, and a being appeared in your bedroom? It sort of materialized?
I was asleep in my parents' house, and I was awakened one night by lights in my window. The door was open, and the first thing I remember is I sat up in my bed and looked towards the open door. The room was dark, the hallway was dark, and looking around the corner of the room was an entity of the classic oval eyes looking underneath a dark cowl. The only thing I could see was actually the head, but I could perceive the body behind the image. And at that point I didn't see anything else, but yet I knew somebody was in my room and felt someone walking towards the bunk beds. Now my room opened up onto a courtyard, and there was a street light across the way, so I could often have very good, you could see what was in the room because of the light from across the street.
Right.
I didn't really see anything in the room, but I knew it was there, and the bunk beds swayed. There was a ladder towards the end, and I felt, the bunk bed shift as if someone was crawling with a ladder. I mean, obviously, you know what that feels like, and I couldn't see anything at that point, but the covers moved. The
Covers moved too?
You could feel the weight on the mattress of the bunk bed, and at that point I don't really think about anything else. I just keep thinking, and then I'm just in my room, and trying to figure out what happened.
Oh, and it's over. So there's like a skip of time, or
and
something.
then I went to sleep.
Then you went to sleep.
Did you sleep a really long time?
I slept until the morning. It was a normal day after that.
Any changes in your life after that? Soon after that?
Yeah, how'd you feel when you got up the next morning?
Well, I thought about it all the next day. I thought about it all the next day. I mean, obviously, I was captivated by this event that just happened to me.
Yeah.
Went to school.
Did you think it was real?
Didn't your dad mention something about it at the breakfast table?
Well, that's right.
No, it wasn't a breakfast table. It was a dinner table. It was a dinner table that same night after the following morning. I had gone to school. My dad had gone to work. My dad mentioned something strange happened to me last night. And I said, really?
Really?
Me too. So he said that he was awakened. He was awakened in his room with the feeling that somebody was in the room. He laid in his bed in an awakened state, but not really moving, just trying to perceive what was around him.
Mm-hmm.
And he felt that something was directly above him, and he reached up and he grabbed it, and he felt something move away from him. And then he chased it out of the room, went back to bed. He felt it another time that night.
So it like touched him somehow? Made contact?
It was touching him. It came to him, and
what was it? What did he? So I guess he felt uneasy enough about it. He felt there was something uneasy, that it wasn't right, and he just didn't want the intrusion.
Oh no, there was somebody in his house. He felt he felt that there was somebody in his house. It was the wrong thing. He was going after him.
What I find really interesting about both of the stories, and the same thing that sort of happened to me, is that after this really intense event, there's like some you can't quite account for some time, not maybe in the classic sense, but all of a sudden you just fall asleep, both to Randy and myself and his dad. All these things happen and then they just fell out. And I had that same experience too. And when I had my experience, though, I still don't know what it is. There's an explanation that maybe it was something that was actually nothing, but after everything happened, I could always just say that, maybe it was this.
Do you think this thing runs in families? Because you're married to Randy's sister, and I think she maybe has had some experiences that are paranormal in nature.
Well, then that would not be by blood.
But do you think maybe people come together and or maybe perhaps get married because they have these experiences that somehow bring them
Clan
together?
of the abductee, yeah.
Or do you think it's just so common that everyone experience, that you could almost go to just about any married couple?
I think it's a random sample thing. Yeah, I don't think it runs down bloodlines like vampires.
It beats the hell out of me why I fell asleep. I can't imagine why I did it. There was no natural event in my house that night, and I went back to sleep.
Oh.
It changed the notion that there's a normal.
I mean, do you think you were sort of headed in one direction and then sort of switched off into another direction at that point?
Nope.
No?
Nope. It's always been me. They did what they did. I am what I am. That's all I am.
Can you talk about otherness? You were saying that this gave you some insight into otherness.
Otherness is just other than what you see in front of you. There's a whole world behind it. There's just the whole other.
Does it bleed over? Do you think there are rules, measurable rules that govern the way it bleeds over into the not otherness, the normal?
No, I think all things have their own intentions.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things I understood most about these things after they came in the room that night was that there was they had their own intentions.
Do you think that they react? Do you think there's an interplay between once you know that they have intentions? Do you think that when you then bring a intention in response, that there's an interplay that goes on, or do you think it's one-sided? Do you think they listen to you, or that they listened to you?
Not particularly. No.
Sort of like an unhuman or a non-human.
No. They had their own intentions. It was an unknown.
Mm-hmm. But it had something to do with wanting something from you, do you think? Or is it more observational?
It's more observational. They were just there to... I think they didn't ever come back because my dad and I woke up that night.
Well, that would be a case where your intention or your awareness did affect their response. And I've always believed that your response, dictates where it goes.
Well, I think it didn't come back because my dad and I woke up that night. If we would have
slept through it,
they would have been back again.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like they're mind parasites or something. I mean, I've heard it described that way.
Yeah.
This was the day before this Christmas?
Yeah.
Okay.
2002. Christmas 2002. So I was sitting there and making pies and cakes, and wanting to make pies and cakes, and missing my family and missing people who have gone, and thinking about my grandmom. And I wanted to make this one cake that's called a eggless, milkless, butterless cake, and it's has no eggs, milk, or butter in it. And it was always one that she made at Christmas time, and I couldn't find the recipe. It wasn't with my regular recipe stuff. And so I started feeling sad, and I can't call her on the phone and ask her how to do it. And I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself, and all of a sudden I heard in my mind, well, it was kind of like a visualization and hearing it at the same time. Look in the Betty Crocker. So I went and looked in the Betty Crocker cookbook, and it was in there. I had punched holes in it at some point and put it in the Betty Crocker cookbook.
It was on a separate piece of paper.
On a separate piece of paper. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't
in the Betty Crocker.
Right.
cookbook,
It was her
right.
her recipe, but I had just stuck it in the Betty Crocker cookbook, which is not what I normally do. And it was funny because I had it's not the normal way that I think of things. It wasn't. At that same moment that I got the visualization and the sound, I also thought, that's odd. That's not the way I usually remember things. And then I found the recipe, and then it was like at that same exact second, Evan came around the corner, and he had a pop, and he held it up, and he said, "Cheers from heaven."
He had a popsicle?
A pop, a Coke.
A Coke.
Coke.
A Coca-Cola.
And I was
A drink.
I looked at the recipe, and I'm like, wow, it's there. And Evan came around the corner, and he goes, "Cheers from heaven."
What do you think, Craig?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I think it scares me. It makes me tingle.
Thanks, number 2. This was way back in the 80s, but I was at work and I was typing, and it's kind of in a zoned out state, just typing away, and all of a sudden I saw this picture of the scene out of my grandmother's living room window. And it was what you would see if you looked out of her living room window. I mean, it was just like, it was there. And I also got this bad feeling at the same time, like something was wrong. And as soon as I could, I called my mother on the phone. I said, "Have you talked to Nanny lately?" And she said, "No, not lately." And I said, "Well, you need to call her. And, I think, just call her. I feel better if you call her, make sure everything's okay." So she called her. Everything was fine. Nothing happened. Well, a couple of months later, my grandmother told everybody that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. But she didn't tell people right away what was going on because she didn't want anybody to worry about her until she knew what it was. And that moment that happened was the moment that she found out that something was wrong, because she was outside and she had run inside to get the phone, and she had leaned over the couch arm to get to the phone like this, and she would have been, the phone was, so it was like the couch arm, phone table, and then the window's here, so she would have been leaning over to get the phone and looking out the window, and she felt a sore spot in
Yeah.
there. And that was whenever she realized that something was wrong, and that was what she was seeing at that
And it was
moment.
like you got that image.
Yeah, but I didn't get confirmation of what it was about until
Yeah, a couple months later.
Whenever she said she said she explained whenever she had noticed that something was wrong, and I'm like, oh my God, 'cause that was.
What do you think, Craig? Are you more afraid?
I am more afraid.
Can we-
Telekinetic. You cause things to happen by just using your brain.
Yeah?
Any other examples of things you've done there?
Well, I just have to stare at them. I just sit at my table on the rug and just stare at them like this.
Bend it more forward, Evan.
And then I stare at them like this. And then they say Fonde Coco when I say Fonde Coco by minds and trying to get them to dismiss my group. It happened. I dismissed my group with my mind.
Wow.
How's it feel?
It feels kind of creepy.
Creepy. What was
Yeah.
You were about to say something else. How else does it feel?
Weird. And it makes me kind of feel a little happy because I know I'm psychic, and that makes me feel kind of happy a little bit.
Kind of a weird happy. Well, could you like deposit some fresh $100 bills on our front porch?
Woggle people, bobble woggle woogie.
I see. You can only use your psychic abilities for.
So how does this bode for you, Craig? When
Well-
and if she wants to, change something that's happening in the family schedule, she may be staring at you from across the room. What are you going to do? Are you going to take this new information and use it?
Use it for ill-gotten gain? Of course, I'm going to harness it for evil, without a doubt.
Well, plus now you'll know that she's trying to manipulate you via telepathic means, and you'll have to develop your own defenses against that.
Wow.
So you see, it steps up the whole ballgame for you too.
I think I'll have to institute corporal punishment.
It's been ratcheted up a little bit.
I see. I'll probably just drink more. my guard, my psychic blinders.
It doesn't work.
Nothing can penetrate my vacuous brain. Nothing can penetrate my vacuous lobe. Nothing can penetrate my vacuous
She's
lobe.
thinking, ice cream for lunch. Ice cream for lunch.
Go ahead.
My brother believes that he was abducted by aliens.
I like the show. It's a good show.
This is really serious, man.
I know. I've interviewed a lot of people about this.
No, not
He had a best friend.
Just right there.
His name was Carlos.
Just right there.
Carlos, unfortunately, his mother left in the middle of the day to go buy tortillas. Hey, dude!
It always like that. It always starts exactly like that.
She never
cigarettes. How many tortillas and cigarettes?
Cigarettes, one or the other.
That's right.
Nothing else though.
She was jonesing for tortillas. She
She
took
never
off.
came back, dude. She never came back. She never came back.
She never came back.
Yes. And Carlos was looking for the luggage.
The luggage.
I know! What luggage? He had told us we would have given it to him. Anyways, so he was abducted by aliens. And he took a test on the internet. So he knows. Huh?
The internet told him yes, you were abducted.
Yes. And I have yet to take that test because I'm scared, man.
It's funny because the internet told me that I had a high IQ.
He must be true. If it's on the internet, it's
I took
true,
a test.
So what were the details of your brother's abduction?
Dude, it's hard for me to talk about it. But he believes that he's got something right here in his neck.
Wait a minute. Is it
Yeah.
Is it your brother?
Yeah.
What?
So this woman who got abducted, that was your mother?
No, dude, listen to me. That was his friend, his imaginary friend.
Okay.
Carlos.
But your brother himself does think he himself
Was abducted.
Yeah.
and did that happen at your home?
Evidently, man. We lived together forever.
Yeah.
He was older than me.
But this was when he was at home?
I guess. I don't know, man.
See, I have an
Did you share a
experience.
room?
Yes, we did, man. Maybe I was too. That's why I'm scared to take the fucking test, man.
That kind of thing. Do you have any, maybe perhaps half remembered
No,
things?
dude, I have no memory of that, man. So I'm scared to take the damn test.
Don't take the IQ test.
But what you must be. Maybe you're scared because.
Maybe I was abducted too, man.
Maybe you were abducted. Yeah.
Yeah, I live in an apartment. They work for me. But there's this house across $2.5 million for this little piece of it's going to be tear down.
No, I wasn't a fighter. The whole thing's full of Christmas stuff. You're not going to have a song? I remember you too, but I don't. Karyn.
Maybe I will.
It's really the beverage that makes stuff like that.
When I was about 20, a friend of mine and I were over at his house at night. We'd been out drinking and goofing off all night. And we were lying on the front lawn of his house looking up at the stars and talking. And he got up and said, "Hey, let's go into the house." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Let's just go upstairs. We'll go into the house. Let's go into the house, we'll go upstairs to my room." And I said, "No, that's a bad idea." He said, "Come on." He got up and started walking towards his house. So I got up and followed him. Walked into the house behind him. And he started going up the stairs. The stairs were creaking. And his folks were the sort that if they knew that we were there and had been up, they would check us to see if we'd been drinking, and they'd catch us sneaking in, and it just wasn't a good idea. And we were going up the staircase, and I was saying, this is really stupid. The stairs were squeaking, and he started going slower and slower, and I thought, good, he's reconsidering. And he just stopped. We were standing in the middle of the staircase in his house, about midnight, I guess, and he disappeared. And I was standing in the house, in the stairs, on the stairs, in the middle of the stairs, in the middle of the house, in the dark, alone. And I looked around for him. It was dark, and I thought maybe he ducked down or gone over the edge or run up ahead or something. I looked around, I didn't see him, so I turned around and went out, and he was out in the front lawn, where I had left him, evidently. I evidently just got up, thought I was following him, and walked into the house.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was a strange evening, because we were both lying, we used to get high all the time. We were both just lying on our backs looking at the stars, and it was one of those evenings where you really connect with your sense of being alive and part of the mystery and all that shit, And it was intense anyway, and then this bizarre doppelganger thing or whatever it was happened. Yeah, it was really interesting.
This is 25 years or more back, and I'd gone for a walk after dark. There was a moon, and walked in the hills of Southern California, in an area where I lived in Agora. It's pretty rural, pretty remote, and normally go for a walk there, you never see anybody or anything. So anyway, I'd gone out for a walk, and after an hour or so, I'd dropped into a little canyon where I didn't normally go, and at the bottom came to a small kind of a dry riverbed, lake bed thing. All these weeds that were taller than my head, and in going through them, I made a lot of noise. It was dry weeds. It was really noisy. And as I was going through there, I kept thinking that if there was a poacher out there hunting deer at night, they might think that I'm a deer because they couldn't see me. At this point, I started getting really paranoid. And so at some point, I went ahead and I made some yells, or I said something so that if somebody was out there, they would know that I was a human being as opposed to a deer or some animal. And when I got through the dry weeds to where it thinned out and it turned into a path, I was still feeling kind of paranoid and frightened. And I got just a few hundred yards, and suddenly in front of me there was this bat that was probably, I don't know what, had a wingspan of like 50 feet, and it was crumpled up and dead. It was like, it looked like 15? 50. 50 feet. It was just laying there, crumpled in a heap, dead, and I could feel the heat coming off of it. And it was impossible. I was looking at it going, my God, this is impossible. Nothing like this exists. It can't be. And it scared the shit out of me. And I'm looking at it, and I went ahead and decided that it really couldn't be, and I didn't want to believe it. And so I approached it with my hand out closer and closer. And when I touched it and held onto it, it turned into an oak tree that had died and just fallen there. And then I went, oh, I'm just imagining all this, and it's really just a dead oak tree, and this is just a paranoid hallucination. And then I let go of it, and it immediately turned back into this bat again. And like I said, I could still feel the heat coming off of it like it had just died. And it was just absolutely terrifying. Every hair on my back was standing up. I was just absolutely petrified with fear. But I didn't want to believe this was really a bat. And so I just grabbed it again and it turned to a tree. And I decided that I was just going to believe it was a tree. I turned around and walked away. And it was one of those walks where you really wanted to break into a run, but just kind of...
You wanted to be cool because
I kept my composure.
You didn't know what might happen if you showed fear.
Something like that. It's hard to say at this point. But Yeah, that was.
Well, that's
my bad story.
That's a strange story.
It was definitely
That is
a very
really
strange story. It's just one of those instances where you kind of meet your dreams and your inner reality, and you can't separate them from the outer reality.
Right.
And I was caught in that.
You're in the waking dream.
Right.
Or
and I didn't know what was going on.
Walking dream
Right.
state.
That's right. A year or so later, I was involved with an Indian group that was in Agora, and they were trying to more or less bring back the old ways and everything. And anyway, so I was like,
what was your involvement?
I guess you'd say that I minored in anthropology in college, and I had a strong affinity for, I guess, indigenous ways in a lot of ways over my own culture. And so I had a certain romantic desire to be more like that. And I guess it had to do with a period of my life when I was exploring that. And so I got involved there. Like I said, I'd kind of like donate my time and energy and things at times, you know. And so one night, all the guys had to take off for some important thing, and they'd asked me to come over and babysit, so to speak. I mean, the women were there, and they needed at least a couple of men there. They felt like just to, in case something happened. So like, this is like during the period of like Wounded Knee, and paranoia used to run really high there as far as being besieged by federal agents or other Indians, and so there's a lot of like I say, paranoia and tension, anxiety, and everything like that there. And anyway, so this one night, I was at the house, and sometime 10, 11 o'clock rolls by, and it's like time to go to bed. And I was staying over there because I was asked to do. And when I left the house, this was on a property that had probably 6 or 8 acres, and it was, even in itself, set away from everything else. It was just very rural. And so there were 2 teepees they had out front, and there were a bunch of other outbuildings that people used. And I'd asked about using one of the teepees that night, believing that no one was there. And sure enough, Penny, she said, "Oh yeah, there's no one out there. Everybody's gone, you know, so go ahead and use either teepee, it doesn't matter." And she told me there's firewood out there and everything. It was a very cold night, probably, in the teens that night. So I'd walked out, and then you have to go through a funny little passage in the fence that doesn't allow animals through, and I was like kind of groping my way through the dark out there, and didn't have a flashlight or anything. And so finally I find that, and about the time I get through it, I finally look towards the teepees, which was, like just a few hundred feet away now, and I see a light on, and it's like, it's not a light, there's a fire in the teepee, there's people in there and they have a fire. And I go, I wonder why she didn't tell me there were people there, And so, I'm getting chills just thinking about this. But anyway, so I started walking towards it, and as I walk towards it, I get this premonition that there's a group of elderly Indians in there, and they want to talk to me. And I remember getting real chills here. Anyway, so as I'm approaching the teepee, I'm feeling like they're not really there. They're like psychically there or something, and they want to talk to me about my own personal psychic abilities and so forth. And about this point, I look at the teepee, and it's black, and it's like, and then I do a thing where I realize that probably what's happening is all in my own mind, and it's really okay. So like, don't worry, just go to the teepee, and everything's fine. But as I got to the teepee, I felt this incredible sense that these people were really there. And as I stood in front of it, I said, "Who's there?" knowing that no one would answer, but it was something I had to do just to alleviate my sense of fear. And I didn't really want to believe all this was happening, so I said it as a way to simply kind of dissipate the mood. And then I walked in the teepee, and of course there was no one in there. There was no fire on. And I built a fire, and I had an incredible vision there where I ended up breathing fire. I was like leaning over the fire, and just I felt like I was inhaling. I can't honestly tell you what I did because I'm not an outside observer. But in my memory, I was actually leaning over the fire and breathing in the fire, and I could actually see the fire as little individual spirits. And I imagined that the fire was just little spirits, little like I guess in physics you might say quantum units. Like I saw the fire as little things that were simply evaporating into space. And I had this vision of this woman that appeared in the air there. That she was this old woman that turned into a young woman and turned into a lot of different women. And the message was that I would never know the woman I was going to be in love with by her outer appearance. I would only know her from the inward. And so eventually I went to bed. I went to sleep, exhausted. And didn't think too much of it, the next few days. But then, when the guys got back, Semu, who was the leader there, said he had a vision where he felt like he was the leader of the West, and that there were going to be 3 other leaders from the North and the East and the South, and they were going to help unify the Indian people. And at any rate, so right at this time, he gets a call from these Canadians, Chief Smallboy, and his people. They had just recently occupied some national parkland in Canada, and so they were going to come down and see him. They had never been more than a couple hundred miles from where they were born. They didn't speak English, but they were coming there. And so in less than a week after I was in the teepee, this guy, Chief Smallboy, his medicine man, and his elders, they all show up and they stay in the teepee that I was in. And it just kind of, it was one of those things that just kind of left me with like chills right now when I speak about it, because it was like such a premonition of what would happen.
I believe that we are part of what we're seeing in the skies, somehow. And I believe that if a deal was ever made, then it would be toward the releasing of technology little by little, so that we could sort of understand a final contact or a meeting between an alien race. Now, that's just one alien race. See, that's the Greys. Okay, but there are several that are reported throughout our time and throughout long ago history. Tall fellows, and then the blonde people, and then the very nice humanoids apparently from somewhere else. But they have a great affinity for us. I think we're on the brink of meeting not just an alien race, but realizing we are the alien race that's meeting them. And so that means we have a whole new deal here. How do you present that to the people of Earth? I think you release it slowly. I think you put it in the papers. I think that I would assemble a team, and I would call them something like Majestic 12, or I would call them the Working Group. And these guys would say, okay, why don't we make a little film called E.T., or why don't we make a little program called, called Strange Encounters, or why don't we make sure that a lot of, these books these people are writing gets out and gets published, and we have some good press on them now, instead of bad press. There's an awful lot out there that would never have been printed by any publishing companies because there wasn't any market for it. Now there's a huge market. People are hungry to say, is there somebody else? Well, there is, and they're here.
In other words, in the old Star Trek manner, hey, this is a federation, and we want to bring you up slowly. The Prime Directive says, don't interfere with the evolution down there, and don't mess them up too bad, and don't go back in time and really screw them up, So, I only know this from my own experience, and this was literally my own experience. I've seen saucers, 9 different sightings. I've never had a really close encounter, except one, that I still worry about or think about. I've never used any hypnosis to recover it, but it was in Glen Rose, Texas. And
what happened?
I saw a light. I was there with my mother getting some treatment. They're a wonderful center there. That's where dinosaur imprints are. They're huge fossil remains and stuff. It's a center of energy. The water is every kind of mineral water you'd want coming out of spouts. It's like the electronic doctors were there, old healers from Germany, you know, at the Schneider Sanatorium, and they could just know what was wrong with you by looking at you and laying on of hands, all kinds of things that we now, well, people that are really in the know come to think of as commonplace and actually therapeutic. It's actually taught. So we're finally coming up to the body electric, that it does have a field, that this is probably precursor to any disease that manifests, and that if you can cure that or heal that or reinforce that or make it more positive, then you're gonna, you know, the body's gonna be okay. Well, he was great. I'm standing there on a little bridge and there's kind of a curfew that I didn't know about. I was a teenager, a young boy. A light goes over and then stops in the middle of the sky down the river. And I'm saying, oh boy, it's one of them. And I'm really looking and I'm just happy. I'm looking up at it and I'm saying the usual thing. Hey, I'm over here. Come on, come on. Yeah, that's it. A little closer. Come on, let's go. Come on, I'm over here. It didn't do any good, as far as I know. So the light just stays there, and finally I'm getting very bored. I find myself very bored. Here I am very interested in this hovering light, and I'm very bored. I cast another look at the light, and it was gone. And I realized that 20 minutes had gone by in the blink of an eye. So evidently I have a little missing time too. So who knows what evil lurks? The shadow knows.
What about some of these other sightings that you had? Just saw saucers and...
Oh yeah, they were mostly the ones that look like stars, and starlight movement, and zigzag patterns. You are waiting to see a sign. No sign will be given to you, man. No sign is going to come to you, man. The signs have already happened. The signs are now. You have wasted lots of time, you know. Now is the time. Waken. The time is now. So I give it to you. Back again. And in the time of our lives, breathe the air. Feel now. And realize who you are. That you're far greater than anyone has ever allowed you to believe you are. And that's mankind from now on out.
But we're here today with an expert in visual imagery. His name is Scott Ward, and he is a popular artist here in Seattle, a painter. Scott leads seminars in the artist way for those of you who are familiar with that. It's all about unlocking one's creativity. We are going to see what connections we can come up with in regards to imagery and creativity.
Mm-hmm. You know, I have dealt with a lot of people who are trying to be more creative in their lives, and the experience that is more common to me is that there has been a sense of adversity in their life, and that there is a need to find a deeper meaning. And so through the aspect of creativity, which really is hand in hand with spirituality, and that is saying, you know, what is true for me, and trying to create that in their lives. So I think the creative part is actually the active part of being spiritual, that, you know, it's the daily practice of how to be authentic in your life. When I look at my own life, I think that I am constantly searching for really what is true. You know, growing up I was Catholic, and being told what to think and believe, and it always rubbed me the wrong way. Most of what I was being told didn't fit with who I felt I was. So now in my adult life, after looking into many different religions to see if I could find a home somewhere, I actually couldn't find anything that fit. And so I think in my life as an artist and trying to be creative, I am searching for really what is true. What are the universal truths? What is true for me? And when I paint, I think I paint the way I experience things. It's very symbolic, everything that I put into my paintings means something, and it's usually the issue that I'm dealing with currently. And I think for most artists and creative people, that's what they're doing on a daily basis, is trying to express what is true for them. You get a lot of, and it's different for everyone. There's a lot of what I call dark art, and I think it's just people trying to deal with their struggles and the heaviness of life, because this experience is a heavy experience. And so if you're going to do it from a spiritual level, it becomes a light thing. But if you're stuck in the emotional body about it, then you actually get caught up in the heaviness of that. It depends on what level you're at spiritually as to what you're able to produce creatively. And I don't think that there is any kind of break between the two. They are so intertwined, creativity and spirituality, that there's no way to have one without the other. Well, I think part of it is, from my experience in dealing with people, is that a lot of people get caught in the sense of being a victim to what has happened and no sense of responsibility about it or towards it. And the thing is, you can play the victim role, and that's where you get stuck. If you are feeling like things are happening to you without your sense of input or power about it, then you get caught in that quagmire of emotion and heaviness, and it becomes overwhelming and wrought and dark. And the trick is actually to view it as though you are a participant in what is happening, and that gives you some of the power in what to do. So it means that you view it as though on some level you chose that experience, that there's some value to that experience from which to grow spiritually, and it's not meant to bring you down. That's not the purpose of our experience here. And so it's just this little shift in how you view what that experience is from your point of view, rather than it being subjected to you, that you actually own that experience and view it as, especially the paranormal kind of experience, I think is an amazing experience. And if you could view it as that, then it gives you a lot of fodder for spiritual growth.
Do you know, have you worked with anyone who's had some experiences like that you can think of offhand?
Not offhand. I have a lot of people who have had experiences. Well, yeah, I mean, in the spiritual realm of actually being visited by people that they have loved who have passed on, and that kind of experience. I've met several people who have had that experience, and I myself have had that experience. And so, I think when it's a positive experience like that, when it's about someone that you have really cared about and you get a visit from them, then it's easy to see that it's a spiritual experience. And sometimes I think those experiences are a little scary, because they're not anything that the average person will support you with. But I have had several people who have had that kind of experience, and it's hard to know what to do with it, because like I said, you don't get the general support from just anybody. You have to have a support system. That's the other part of the whole thing, is being able to build a support system of people who will believe in you and trust you and support you in your experience and allow you to see it from that point of responsibility and participation. It was my mother's mother, my maternal grandmother, and I am the oldest grandchild and was close to her, and she took a long time. She had cancer, and so it took a long time to die, and I tried to spend as much time with her as I could those last few months. And in the middle of the night, it was at 3:28 exactly, I woke up and there was my grandmother standing at the foot of my bed, and At the time, I was going through a lot, trying to decide what to do with my life, and she simply looked at me and said, everything's going to be all right. If you follow your heart, everything will be all right. And I had this huge sense of peace and beauty about it. I mean, it was an amazing experience, and then it was just, I fell back to sleep, and she was gone, and a few hours later, my mother called me and told me that my grandmother had passed away, and I knew. I said, I know that, and I know that it happened at 3:28, and, there was silence from my mom's end of the phone, but it was reassuring to know that the timing was exactly as it had happened, and it just validated it for me that it was really a true experience. And, since then I've had very telling dreams that give me the same experience, and I know that I've had past life experiences or remembrances in dreams that have had the same feeling, and I just know that there is a greater experience than the one that we have here on the physical plane, and the visit with my grandmother was just the beginning of my understanding of that, but it was really a great thing, and that is what I've heard several people have a similar experience to that.
What excites you right now?
Well, what excites me right now is I'm in the process of putting together a creativity retreat, and so I'm wanting to do a retreat and helping people be as creative or more creative in their lives than they are, and just giving people tools to do that. It's
do you have a website? You can plug it.
I do. It's scottwardart.com, and check it out. Come to the retreat, small retreat, but I think it's
what sort of things do people do at these retreats?
It's a lot about there. You can do a lot of retreats where there's a lot of creativity where it's uncovering what's blocking you, and I think that that's fine, but the ultimate goal is to be able to live creatively. And so I have, over the past 8 years working on creativity with people, have come up with several different exercises and daily practices into how to be more creative and focusing on the creative part of your life. So you'll walk away with different, we're all different, but there will be different exercises or activities to do that will hopefully inspire creativity in you and keep that a focus in your life. Where do we start? This is a painting I call The One Who Can Will the Single Thing, which is about what Kierkegaard's definition of a saint. So someone who can really focus on and find what's true for them. And this is the experience of a dream I had of how I fly in my dreams. And it's an amazing experience.
Do you fly a lot in your dreams?
It's something, it's an ebb and flow. So sometimes I fly for quite a while, and then there's this period where I don't. And I think it just is how my life is at the time. If I'm feeling free or spiritually centered, I do a lot of flying. If I'm feeling caught up in life, then I don't really have those dreams.
Because there have been several people so far that I've talked to who've been flyers.
Really?
Yeah.
And it's nice because I fly like the painting is standing up. And so it's this actually great sense of hovering, and it's peaceful and quiet, and there's no sense of actually flying like a bird, but just willing myself to raise and float. And it's an amazing, amazing experience. It's just...
I do the same thing. I just sort of raise my arms and just will myself to come off the ground.
Yeah, I love that. It's just a phenomenon.
So you're lucid dreaming at that point.
Yeah, and I can exactly dictate where I'm going to go, and sometimes even who I encounter. So I encounter people that I care about often, and the world that I paint actually looks like the dream. So the smooth hills and those vivid colors are exactly how I see the world. So.
Here we are in Olinda on the island of Maui. We're here with some intrepid investigators looking into recent reports of a phantom panther here in Olinda. There have been a deer was mangled, claw marks in trees. The Maui County wildlife folks brought in an investigator from Arizona, a trapper, who set about 20 traps here in a 20 square mile area. And none of the traps yielded anything, so they suspect that someone owns a black panther and is letting it run around. But of course they don't know that these reports come from all over the country, the continental U.S., and that these panthers are never found. They appear to be paranormal entities. They can be shot. They can kill things. They've never ever been found, and they technically do not exist in North America. So I don't know if they ever did. We've got an expert here who can speak to that. But I came here because we did have panther sightings on Woodward Drive back in the 60s during the Mothman days, and these sightings are still occurring, and in fact are occurring more and more often around the country. There are panther reports daily, in fact. And Aaron Chang's here. He's an Asian history researcher. He's researched the Garuda and some of the other Asian traditions, and he's just gotten recently into this phantom panther chase.
Understandably, they have confronted this as if it is a real panther, which led the Hawaii Wildlife Service to spend the money to set the traps and in fact bring in an expert for Arizona. With claw marks on the trees, a deer being attacked, local sightings, all of these things would indicate a corporal panther that, understandably, these people were concerned that there is a panther running in their midst. But interestingly enough, they set 19 traps, and of course once the traps were set, they caught a dog. And because the panther cannot be caught, because the panther is a representation of some of the deeper dark energy forces, paranormal activity that is present in all of our lives and manifests itself at certain times at certain places. Olinda happens to be one of these places, and I think we can all, at least those of us here, feel some of that energy surrounding us at this time.
We're on the sacred volcano of Haleakala. If you look down over through the valley there, you can see just how high up we are. I mean, we're quite a ways up here. It's pretty sacred land, fairly sacred.
That indeed, yes, is my understanding of the volcano.
Here's a shot of Hawaii Place where the panther was apparently sighted. Do you have any psychic leanings? When you track these panthers, I mean, you obviously think that it's part of the collective unconscious manifesting. Do you have any techniques that others can use to if they're confronted by one of these panthers? Because some people have seen it coming in and out of the water down at the beach too. So, what could a tourist do or an average person do if they run across a black panther? Should they immediately start psychoanalyzing themselves as to why they're seeing it, or?
Definitely, that is one option, one way of dealing with the paranormal.
Should they just run like hell?
That's another option. I would probably myself run like hell, seeing a panther leaving the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that you've even gone so far as to try to track their underwater layers. But, I mean, obviously they have to be. This has to be an interdimensional being, because there's no way it could come in and out of the water like that.
Well, I would not say impossible, but not probable, no, that it would come in and out of the water. Most panthers, although they do swim.
So here we are at 10,000 feet. up on this sacred volcano. Reports that the panther could have been seen up here. How do you explain that a black panther could be up at in this barren terrain?
Well, clearly it's reinforces again the sense that it's not a panther. It is a panther, a paranormal entity, seeing as it's not affected by altitudes or winds or cold.
There's nowhere for a real panther to hide.
No, and there's a lot of sharp volcanic rocks which would cut its paws. It's not a mammal. It's a paramammal, if you will. It's a mammal, but more. It's trying to call out and make us aware of conflicts that we have all within us.
You know, Aaron, it seems like the search for the Black Panther is almost a spiritual practice for you. Is that true?
It's something that I don't talk about in my materials very much, but it has something to do with my childhood growing up in the mountains of New Mexico and hearing of the panthers, and through my father's family. But now it's strictly,
in China, you mean?
yes, in the Sichuan province, a little around Chongqing. It's known in that region as well. I've had an opportunity to return, and I wouldn't call it research yet. It was just a little foray to get my toes wet in my cultural heritage. Yes.
I read somewhere in one of the journals that you had gone to the Buddhist caves there in western China, and you were studying some of the art and things there in the caves. Is there a Buddhist angle to this panther thing?
Being part of the collective unconscious, it could be interpreted to be one of our shadow creatures that is just of a manifestation of all that is. I think if you look at some of the early Chinese art from the Shang Dynasty, some of the etchings on their bronzes, you're going to see a lot of panthers, which are very similar to the art that you find in the northwest coast and also the Peruvian. My understanding is that, in fact, right here on Haleakala, that the Hawaiians would venture up here to this very inhospitable region.
Let's take a look out here. I mean, it's virtual whiteout conditions.
And they'd come up here for religious reasons as well as to gather basalt for their stone tools and hunt for birds. But religious was one of the key reasons, and there isn't really a great explanation among the literature of why they came up here, but I'm going to say that it was either to run away or to run towards the panther, one of those two.
You know, back to the Keel name game. When you're in areas where you've had a lot of these phantom panther sightings, you find that the name game is in effect. Here we find magnetic peak, which intimates that perhaps there's an electromagnetic quality to this area. Also the bottomless pit. Perhaps a satanic angle to that. It is Christmas Eve 2003. This 2-year project is drawing to a close. There have been some interesting developments just since the Moth Fest, which I should touch on. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but just 2 days after we left the Serpent Mound, there was a sighting nearby in Belfast. of a triangular UFO. Also, 5 days after we left the Bush residence, there was a large cigar, don't remember the shape, but a large UFO, I think it was an enormous mothership, was seen in Kahana, which is very close to the Bush palace or mansion. And then just this week, or just in the last week or two, I don't remember the exact date, but it was in December, there was a sighting of a cigar-shaped UFO, similar to the one Harriet saw when she was a child, and it was seen in her suburb of Columbus, according to UFO Roundup. We also had the Moorhead, Kentucky incident where a woman was heard screaming in a field as a UFO descended. The issue it brings to mind is the kind of message that you want to send to people who are experiencing this phenomenon, because that's what this is really all about. It's about empowering those of us who have been through this experience. And Whitley Strieber brings up a good point in his on his website. By the way, here's an image of that balloon eyeball crop circle that was seen, that formed 2 weeks prior to the Moth Festival in near proximity to the Serpent Mound. And we actually drove by this and didn't really realize what a significant thing it was. But Harriet and I, drove right by it, looked at it. It didn't look very impressive from the ground, but once you see it from the air, it's more than that. It's a mathematical equation of some kind, and the eyeball seems to be looking at the Serpent Mound. With regard to Whitley Strieber, Whitley's journal from his website, he brings up this idea of that we should not advise people who are experiencing this experience to be reckless. Some of the abductions lately seem to be dangerous, harmful, and Strieber feels that when we tell people that it's all hunky-dory and only good health and healing and all these wonderful things that we've been talking about, that we may be setting people up for a bad experience, because the phenomenon does go through its very dark periods. So I just tell people that running is still an option, and that's certainly one that I used on Woodward Drive. You can always go back and do some hypnotic regression, or go back to the site, do your own research to sort of find out what happened. But it's the most important thing is to stay alive and stay healthy. One of the things that Strieber mentions in his journal is the fact that as soon as his UFO contact started, his memory of childhood improved. He says, it was a falling away of the amnesia of babyhood. I remembered all the way back to coming into my mother's body. He also mentions the master of the key. This is a phrase that came up in the early work I did in Texas, which will be in the prequel to this trilogy. The key comes up as one of the things that people were experiencing in Austin. People who were doing extreme drug trips and things were coming back and talking about this key. What was the key? And we have some interesting interviews about that very topic. Another interesting thing that Strieber brings up is that he feels as if meditation opens gateways into the phenomenon. And that's one of the reasons why there's sort of a backlash against anyone who starts to talk about meditation in relation to the UFO phenomenon. They're often ridiculed for that, but literally recent studies have shown that when meditation occurs, certain parts of the brain are lighting up, depending on the kind of meditation that's occurring. Strieber states, "The message of my contact experience is clear. Face the fear, and you will get rewarded by breaking down natural barriers to perception that impede you from interacting completely with the world in which you live." Now, there are those who don't want this to happen. Through all of our history, mankind has been passive, like a big fat cow in the higher world. It is richly alive, though, this world, and constantly interacting with us in dozens of different ways. We open gateways into it with meditation. We pray to its inhabitants. We seek its knowledge and its energy every day of our lives, but we do not understand it and we can't see it most of the time. Remember what the West really is, a 2,000-year-old theocracy that has just in the past 250 years collapsed. Throughout that time, people of the type who now rule science were liable to be burned to death for even the most subtle suggestion of a thought that contradicted the rigidities of the theocracy. Until the 18th century, a person could be burned for suggesting that vision could be improved by eyeglasses, because that suggestion put man above God by implying that his creation was not complete. Strieber writes, "It becomes clear that meditation is a physical act that affects physical life, the very physical life of the energetic part of our body. It has come to be called the soul, and completely misunderstood in terms of our effort to impose meanings on the world that are actually too small to describe the world." Well, what does this mean in terms of the visitors and abductions and mutilations and terror which we now face? It means that by strengthening and energizing the radiant body, we will increase our vitality in this other level of reality, and in doing so gain abilities and even rights that those who live in illusion do not have. Here's a shot of the other crop circle that formed in Ohio. I think this was in Bainbridge, Ross County. Another interesting thing is that Harriet had an incident where a man materialized and then dematerialized in front of her in her living room. She described this person to me and said he looked like he had liver damage. Well, it turns out the day before, a friend of mine, a Buddhist priest here in Seattle, had died of liver failure, and her description of him was exact. By the way, Harriet's prediction that the sniper would stop and then start again came true. It's just that he changed cities when he started again. Now he's operating in Harriet's own town, Columbus. Okay, a couple of more things about the Serpent Mound very quickly. It lines up with the constellation Draco. You lay Draco over the Serpent Mound and you get a lot of hits on all the various stars. Appears to be cosmological implications with the Serpent Mound effigy, and there are a lot of theories flying around about that. Also, the Serpent Mound has a lot of magnetism deflecting the compass needles and so forth, just like Magnetic Peak in Maui. It's also in the middle of Ohio's biggest uranium deposit, and it's in the middle of a crypto explosion zone, which is an unexplained upheaval of the Earth. By the way, Bill Bryant called to say he was driving in Utah. He saw the same car pass twice within 30 seconds. Same driver, same car. He entered an alternate state where he had a vision of the energy grid, the energy matrix of the Earth, with nodes protected by entities. He feels that this matrix may be connected to the crop circle formations. I'd like to close with a quote from this book, Picturing Extraterrestrials, Alien Images in Modern Mass Culture. One of the points that the author, John Moffat, a professor in New Mexico, makes is that we used to live in a time when apostasy or not believing what the church said meant that you would be burned at the stake, and today that's quite different. The downside is there's been so much of a proliferation of images about UTs, ultra-terrestrials, ETs, UFOs, that he says, if indeed the truth is out there, then the truth is simply merely that we live in a capitalist society. And here, no surprise this, all that matters is supply and demand. In sum, when it's not just about emotional stimulus for the postmodernist American masses, cheap thrills and paranoid chills, then mostly it's all about money, great sums of it. And trust me, the demand for alien thrills and chills will persist. But if, God forbid, it does not, then always lurking behind are the thronging host of new mental aberrations, novel weapons of mass distraction. Moffat feels that doing research on UFOs, or even things like painting or doing poetry or chanting mantras, all of these things are ways of killing time, diverting ourselves, keeping ourselves occupied while we're alive, and that all of these alternate diversions represent diverse, essentially harmless, and ecologically sound activist alternatives to passive surrender. The passive surrender of the mesmerizing bewitchments provided in such unchecked abundance by the postmodernist infotainment industries. A final observation has it that our time, the modern age, has been, above all, the age of mass delusions. Viewed in the context of all other historical periods, ours is uniquely the age of mass delusions. And how could it have been otherwise? Never before were there what we now call the mass media. And these have been made immediately accessible to all potential customers inhabiting a new wholly wired global village. Among other effects, mostly baleful, by so vigorously vending their cheap thrills, the mass media have also produced a worldwide infection of ETs and UFOs. And what's next? God only knows.
Man against God, God against man, man against God, man against nature, man against God, God against man. Very funny religion. Man against God, God against man, man against God, nature against man, man against God, God against man. Very funny religion. Against God, God against man, man against God, God against nature, man against God, God against man, nature against God, God against nature. Man against God, God against man, man against God, nature against man, man against nature, nature against man. Very funny religion. Against God, nature against God, man against God, man against nature, man against God, God against man.